I couldn't imagine that I would be, I'll be doing such a lot of interviews in front of such a lot of cameras 7 years ago. But I think now this has become a part of my life, that I have the responsibility as part as part of Hong Kongers and also part of the protesters. I have the responsibility to tell the whole world, to tell the international community that what's happening in Hong Kong and why Hong Kong people are fighting so hard for democracy.
And also as a young woman, do you feel that you're the voice of what's happening to other women as part of this fight for democracy? Because you're worried about the police violence.
Yes, and actually, after I was arrested in the police station, during the check, the body check, I was also forced to take off my trousers. Of course, it's very unreasonable for me, and they have no reason, or they have no reasonable kind of a reason to that they have to take off my trousers to check my body. But yeah, I believe that many of the protesters, especially female protesters, are facing such a lot of kind of attack or sexual harassment, etc. And not only the violence from the police, even on the internet, as the Chinese Communist Party will hire a lot of people on the internet to try to post a lot of comments about
Sexual
how
comments.
good posing a lot of comments, or maybe pro-Beijing comments, that the Chinese Communist Party will hire such kind of people to make the internet with some to increase the pro-Beijing voices on the internet. And sometimes those people would attack like me or other female activists, maybe by our appearance, or maybe using some sexual kind of description to attack or try to criticize us.
Like what? Give me an example.
Like they might use your there was comments on your appearance. They would use a lot of negative words to describe your appearance or your body, or how you dress, how's your body style, things like that.
Did the police tell you why they felt it necessary to take your trousers off? Because you're accused of something that happened several months earlier.
Yes, and my my charges are not something about hiding drugs or anything like that. My charges is getting involved in protests. So what's the reason of taking off my trousers in the police station for body checking? And but the police didn't explain any reason to me.
Were you scared?
Well, I believe that many of the protesters who experience even more violence than me are more afraid, or experience a stronger fear than me. Yeah.
It sounds pretty intimidating, though.
Yes, and I believe that these kinds of sexual harassment or this kind of violence attack from the police would continue in this movement, or even in the future Hong Kong, because the Hong Kong government keeps on avoiding the responsibility to have an independent investigation over the behavior and over the violence of police. That's why the police could do what they want to do. So they are not kind of being monitored by a perfect kind of system. So when they are not being properly monitored, they could do what they want to do, to attack us, to attack people they don't like.
Are you nervous about speaking to us now? Are you nervous about repercussions against you after you've left this interview or anything like that?
I would say that, well, if we Hong Kongers don't talk this, don't introduce our situation to the international community, Hong Kong would become much more terrible in the future, because it is always very important for the international community to monitor the situation in Hong Kong and the human rights situation in the whole China. So that's why I would say that these kinds of like, for example, accepting interviews from the international media is a very important thing for Hong Kong people.
Because you're very self-effacing. You're very reluctant to put it seems to me, to put yourself in such a high-profile position. But you feel it's your duty, or
really, I'm not really that reluctant, because doing these kinds of interview has been one of a part of my life since 2012. So I kind of get used of it, and I will feel that with our connection with the international community, I have the responsibility as part of a Hong Kongers to correctly tell the situation in Hong Kong to the international world, but not the Chinese Communist Party's version.
do you see yourself as brave?
I would just say that many people are much braver than me.
You're very modest.
Thank you.
How would you describe yourself as a person, your personality, and what motivates you most?
I would say that the bravery of Hong Kong people and of a lot of young people have motivated me to get involved, or to continue to get involved in the democratic movement in Hong Kong. It is, we couldn't deny that within Hong Kongers and within protesters, there are very strong sense of desperation, because even we had fought so hard in the previous 3 months. The Hong Kong government and Chinese government still keep on rejecting or ignoring our opinion and our 5 demands. So there's of course a very strong sense of desperation. But if we don't stand up to fight now, we might not be able to fight in the future anymore. So that's why, the basic political right to participate in protests and the basic freedom of speech is so important that we have to protect it.
What do you think is going to happen now, Agnes? Because every weekend we've seen it getting worse and more frantic, and sometimes some terrible violence, mostly against physical things, but people have been injured and hurt as well. What do you think is going to happen now?
Well, we can predict that the violence used by police is going to be escalate in the future stage of the movement, and but I could also say that Hong Kong people would not easily give up, that we would continue to fight for the 5 demands, especially democracy, a genuine democracy of Hong Kong.
So if the violence increases, and I don't know, Carrie Lam has already hinted about introducing emergency rule, that could become very difficult, couldn't it?
Of course, to solve the root political problem in Hong Kong and to fight for democracy is always a very difficult thing. Even if we look at the history in the world, in other parts of the world, it is always very difficult to fight for so basic human rights and freedom. But we have no reason to give up, because democracy and human rights is something about our dignity. We as human beings should enjoy these kinds of basic rights. Although the political situation might become more kind of complicated in the future, but and the suppression from the government will become stronger and stronger also in the future. But when we faced, when some of our friends, some of the protesters committed suicide because of their desperation, and when some of our friends lose her eye because of the gun shooting of the police, we have to fight harder, not only just for ourselves, but also for the friends who lose their life and who lose their eyes.
Mm. Um, do you think that any of the violence is justified from the protesters?
I would only say that if the suppression becomes stronger, the opposition from people would also become stronger. And of course, I'm a person who advocate non-violence and protest, but I would say that I really understand why people would want to use different ways to to oppose to the government, because we have used a lot of way already, a lot of methods already to fight for our five demands. We have used the most peaceful and the most non-violent way, protesting, striking, school boycott, etc. But the government still keeps on ignoring our opinion. So sometimes I would say that a bit more radical action is also necessary to in order to give Hong Kong, or in order to give Hong Kong government and the Chinese government more pressure.
You're 22. I've got a daughter who's 22 who loves going out to parties, who does sport, whatever. What do you do in your time off? Do you have any time off, or is your whole life consumed by this?
Well, I didn't have many time off during this movement, but sometimes like before this movement, or like during like winter holiday or summer holiday, I would also have some time to to do something I like. And of course I have such, I have hobbies, and I would do something I like for example, I love learning languages, so that's why I speak Japanese and I'm learning Korean, etc. So although I stopped my Korean classes during this movement because I'm too busy, but maybe after this movement, or after we succeed in this movement, I could continue attending Korean classes.
And what do you want to do in the future? What's your ambition? Or where do you see you'll be in 5 years, 10 years?
Firstly, I would like to, I want to continuously get involved in the democratic movement of Hong Kong, because I know that fighting for democracy is never an easy thing. Maybe we need a lot of time to fight for it, but I would want to I want to continue to join the democratic movement in Hong Kong. And
well, you gave up your British citizenship, didn't you?
Yes.
To try to stand as a
Yes,
candidate.
and I was disqualified by the government because of my advocation that the government treat us as violating the basic law.
So is that where you see your future, being a politician, trying to fight that until you get some sort of...
Well, although I want to be a part of the election, although I want to run for the election, but with the current situation that the Hong Kong government keeps on abusing her power to kick someone they don't like out of the political system, I don't think I'm able to get involved in any election, because the government still does have the power of disqualifying my candidacy or my friend's candidacy.
So is it more you're fighting a point, or are you wanting to be a politician?
Well, of course I ran the election last year because I want to do something for Hong Kong as a legislative councillor, but I don't think I could make this dream or target come true, because I don't think with the current situation the government would let me involved in any elections.